This is called The Jew Being a Defense of Judaism Against All Adversaries by S.H. Jackson, published in 1824. We're going to be on page 279? 277. We're on page 277. We're going to start here. Zoom in a little bit. This is talking about Jews and Cochin, India, in the same location that we were just reading about. It says the Portuguese were always inveterate haters of Jews, fond of Jews' blood and Jews' property, and were the most likely to persecute them and seek their destruction. While the native princes were more likely and really did protect them when they left Cranganore, or there would not now be any white or black Jews in these parts. In Portugal, they dare not be Jews openly. I also noticed the white Jews say but little about it. They merely charged the Portuguese with being a stumbling block and thorn to them, and obliging them to leave Cranganore and seek protection at Cochin. So this guy is a first-hand eyewitness. He says he's talked to the white Jews, which many of them came from Spain and Portugal, according to historical documentation that we just read. When he asked the white Jews about the Portuguese, who were conducting the Inquisition, they just said to him, they're just a thorn in our side and a stumbling block, Pretty much they get on our nerves, like they're like, just a pain in the butt. Let's see what he says now about the black Jews. I'm going to skip down. We're on page 2, we're on the very next page, 278. When he starts talking about the black Jews, he says, thus we may gather from the representations of Sargon himself that the black Jews consider the Portuguese the persecutors and destroyers of their race, and no doubt on account of their former troubles at Cranganore. Much more might be said on this subject, but let this suffice. So what we can see and gather from this source is that the white Jews from Spain and Portugal, all they said is that the Portuguese were a stumbling block to them. Let me make sure I get the exact wording right. They merely charged the Portuguese with being a stumbling block and thorn to them. Okay, while the black Jews consider the Portuguese the persecutors and destroyers of their race. So that's a pretty big difference. The white Jews from Spain and Portugal, they're not really it doesn't say that they're getting destroyed and persecuted by the Portuguese. The Portuguese are just a stumbling block to them. While the black Jews say that the Portuguese are the destroyers of their race, the persecutors and destroyers of their race. So what we can clearly and logically conclude from this document is that when we read the history, because when you read history about, the Spanish and Portuguese Inquisition and all that, a lot of especially modern, scholars, they write about it, what happened to the Jews and how they were treated and all that, how they were tortured. But, modern documents don't really describe what those Jews looked like. But when you go into the history, as we're seeing, these Portuguese Jews were black. But what I wanted to make a point on is when we read the history about the Jews being tortured and, all that during the Inquisition, being persecuted, killed, put on fire and all that, obviously that wasn't happening to the white Jews from Spain and Portugal. If the Portuguese were just a stumbling block to them, just a thorn in their side or whatever it said. The black Jews consider them the destroyers and persecutors of their race, the Portuguese. They consider the Portuguese the destroyers and persecutors of their race, their entire race. So that means not just here in India that was happening, but all around the world. So, I was shocked when I found this, but I really wasn't, But, it just more information to attest to the fact that what we're looking into and researching is not, make-believe.